Hello everyone and welcome to this week's video session on painting. Today I will be starting on a portrait and I will be guiding you through over the next 4 weeks the different processes that I use to create a painting. As you can see on the screen, we have Jose, who is a Portuguese gentleman that I have met, and he's got fabulous tattoos and wonderful looks for painting, and he also has a master's in art. Which we had a very nice conversation. So he agreed to pose for me, and this is the result. I'm sorry it's not a very clear picture. I'm trying to take an image on from my laptop. I'm not able to put images onto my video with the app that I'm using, so we're going to have to do it this way. So this is the image I've finally decided on. It's got nice light, there's good colour, and it's very clear. I chose this particular pose because I like the lighting and I just like the atmosphere of it. I will show you some of the other photographs that I took that I rejected because I didn't feel that they were right. So here's a few. I take many photographs because sometimes you think something's going to work, and when you actually come back to look at it, it doesn't work at all. Head's very big in that one. I do like the way he's quite dark compared with the background, but I don't think it worked as a portrait. So as you can see, lots and lots of different poses. I've sent it to Judy, who will be putting it on the website, and you can look at it as I paint, maybe have it small in the corner of the screen. Having looked at Jose's skin at all the different colours I can see, I've put a variety of different paints on the palette. Some I might use, some I might not. I'm going to just run through them. I've got titanium white, cadmium yellow light, yellow ochre, cadmium yellow deep. This is olive green, which is a very deep green. This is viridian. I've got ultramarine blue, vermilion and cadmium red deep, and I'm thinking that all these colours will probably suffice for the portrait. I'm also using water-based linseed oil because these are water-based oils. If you're using acrylic, you use the same colours and also the same techniques apply. However, you're going to have to blend pretty quickly because with the oils I can take my time with blending. That's if you want to blend. I'm going to be using filberts and flats probably for this, and maybe some rounds. The brushes I'm using will be these. There's a graduate one. I've also got a graduate flat that I might be using, which is a bigger one. This one is a silver Grand Prix from Jackson Arts. Not that impressed with it. This is a Pro Art and it's a bit old, so it's a bit rough, but this is a filbert because I like the soft marks it makes. And this is a Raphael from Jackson Arts, very small. I don't tend to use very small paintbrushes because you end up fiddling around, but I might incorporate that when I'm doing eyes and details. And this is another Pro Art flat, which I always tend to use. I like the size of it. I might introduce other brushes as I go if I need something bigger than the ones I've got here, or a filbert, something like that for a detail, but these are the main brushes. One of the most common ways to start a painting is by drawing it out. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to start by painting in shapes of shadows and light. So I'll be constructing the painting rather than drawing and then filling in. And I will be drawing as I go. So this is just a different way of working, and it's quite exciting way of working because you don't know how it's going to come out, and you also have to do a lot of adjustment. If you don't feel comfortable with this, you can just draw it out and then just paint as you usually do. So first of all, I'm going to put a wash of a green over the whole painting. This is going to be the darkest green, and I'm mixing water with the paint, making it quite weak, and as you can see I'm using a bigger brush. Oops, I'm losing it, so I'll have to put my palette flat. I might actually use a bigger brush for this, because even this one that I'm using is too small. So to get a bigger brush, I've got a very nice Pro Art brush, which will cover it much more quickly. So you can choose whatever colour you like as a ground. The reason I'm using a ground is I don't like working against the white. I find that when I put colours on white, you put another colour next to it and it changes the original colour optically. So by putting a colour on, you've already made a mess. So you've already broken the barrier of facing the white page, which is can be quite daunting. But you're also tonally toning it down. So any colours you put on are not going to behave so extremely against each other. So I only want it watery, and I'm not worried about getting a texture on it. It is very dark, so I'm just going to put more water into it. This will dry very quickly, even though I'm using water-based oils. And then I'm going to put a few general marks to angle of head where the eye sockets will be. So rather than drawing the eyes, I'll be drawing the shape of the sockets, because that's what I'm going to be looking at as I go. That will do. So I'm going to have to put out some more of that green because I've just used it all. So this is now dried a bit. To begin with the portrait itself, I'm going to mix a few colours that I can see in Jose's skin. So starting off with the darker colours, I can see a little bit of a deep green. I'm going to take some of my deep green and a little bit of my red. And I'm going to put a little bit of yellow ochre into it so I can see the colour a bit better. A little bit more red. And I want quite a bit more of that. This will be the darkest area around the edge of his face. A bit more yellow ochre. A bit more red. So that's a very small amount at the moment. I think I'll add a little bit more of that. There is quite a lot of red in his skin. That's a bit lighter. So I'm going to put that to one side. I could keep it there actually. I'm going to mix a darker one. I'm adding a little bit of water at the moment because it's my first layers. I'll be adding more and more linseed oil as I go. I'm going to put a little bit of ultramarine into that, and then that'll darken it down a bit more. Then working onto the next tonal level, I can see there's quite a contrast between the dark and the light. I can see a reddish skin colour, so again using my cadmium red deep and my yellow ochre, it's making a dull sort of a brick red. Oops, sorry, I've moved it out of the screen. So I'm going to add a little bit of the green to tone that down slightly. These are my initial colours. I very often change my mixes as I go. So I'm going to go a little bit lighter. He's got a little bit of purple in there in his skin, so I'm going to add a little bit of cadmium red to some yellow ochre and some ultramarine and a touch of white. I'm going to add quite a bit more to that because I want a lot of this colour. Cadmium red. I can see the colour I've got at the moment actually in there. So what I might do is leave that like that and mix up another colour of a darker skin colour. So taking cadmium red deep and the yellow ochre. A little bit more of the yellow ochre. No, actually, a little bit more of the cadmium red deep. There's a pink there. Also, this will contrast quite nicely with the green of the background. I'll probably keep the colours of the background, which, as you can see in the image, are quite limey greens. I quite like that as a contrast against the warmth red in the skin. So that's probably too red. I need a bit of ultramarine in there. Bit more white. So this will do for down the side of the nose. Bit more yellow ochre. It's quite dull because I'm using the cadmium red deep. So I'm going to mix a bit of a warmer colour to put in his cheeks. So I'm using the vermilion and yellow ochre again, which is quite dull. That will take it down a bit. That's a very loud lipstick red, which I think is probably too loud for anywhere on the face. So I'm going to take it down a little bit with some blue, and I need a bit more vermilion. So that might go in the lips. It's not actually gone brown, so I need a bit more vermilion. Quite like that. That will dot around the face as a warmer colour to these over here. Now I need some fleshy pale colours, so I'm going to take white, yellow ochre again, a little bit of cadmium red deep into there, and I think a little bit of ultramarine to make it slightly purple. So it's going to be a lighter colour. And also I want to mix a kind of around the eyes there is an olive green colour which will be harmonious with the background, which will bring the background into the foreground. So I might add a little bit of cadmium yellow light into this mix. And a little bit of viridian. That was too much viridian. It's very strong viridian. Bit more white, and I'm going to put a little bit of cadmium red deep in it, slightly warm it. Cadmium red deep is also very strong, so that's gone a little bit too brown, so back into the viridian, put some of that in there to take it back to an olive green, and a little bit more of the yellow. So that's it so far. Those are the colours I'm going to use to begin with. However, first of all, I'm going to put a few marks in to show me where I'm going to be painting. The head is about a third of from the chin to the bottom of the photograph. So I'll be measuring that distance, and I'll just be putting a few angles in and hints of noses and eye socket shapes, as I said before. So for that, I'm going to use a bit of deep red and the deep green. So I'll mix that over here, and I'll be watering that down. So the olive green and the cadmium red deep make quite a nice dark colour and quite a rich colour. So I'll be using that. I'm using a small graduate brush just to draw out, and I'm putting some water into this dark colour that I mixed. I'm going to start by putting out a few lines and shapes just to suggest. The head is about a third of the whole body, right down to the waist where the photo finishes. So I'll mark that first. So the head is about a third of the whole body. So I'll be putting that in first, just as I say, in various shapes. So I'm going to leave a gap of about there from the top. If I look at a third, I think the chin would be around maybe here. Let's do a measurement. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, around there. And the angle of the face comes over like that. Got your chin going there. It could be actually I need to bring this over a little bit because it's too far to the right. So forehead, eye shape, nose, and then you've got the whole bottom of the face from the nose. It's going around there. I'm not too sure about my positioning on the page, but that will come as I work, probably. Chin goes down there. Ear is parallel to the eye, so ear would be around there. Got a dark area there. And going down the neck's nice and long. And then shoulder drops down. And the other shoulder, if you look at the line across, goes there, about. Actually, there's a slope, so I think it's a bit lower. I think this could go a bit lower. And then arm sweeps to there. Could be my head is a little bit big, but I will see as I go. I can do a little bit of measuring. I could measure the chin to the top of the head and compare it with the arm. Let me just do that. Right, so the chin to the top of the head, the elbow should be about where I put it, going across and up. So this will be, this shape will be a bit higher. So that's about all the drawing I'm going to do. What I'm going to do next is take a bigger brush. So I'm just going to use my Graduate Flat, this one. And I'm going to put in shadows in a very weak paint again. So there's a shadow here with the hair going in front of the ears and down into the beard shadow there. If I squinted it, I can see the shadow on the cheek. All the hair is dark, which I quite like because it frames the face. The head actually goes up a bit there. Down the back, and then you've got a big shadow here. I'm going to lose the hair into that shadow so I can do around the ear. There is a lighter area just here, and then the beard goes down there. This stops over the shoulder, and you've got a dark shadow going into the top of the arm there, and then I'm just going to block in the shape of the shadow of the arm, which comes down about here. I'm not going to be painting all of the body because with the time limit that I have, it will take too long. What I'm going to do is just concentrate on the face with some background, but this is just showing you how to completely map out. So we have this hand here and the arm, so there is a shadow from the elbow, goes flat and then up like that, and then there's a shadow within the arm, and you can just see the thumb, shadow behind the thumb. Also a shadow on the side of the chest there, and then the hand comes to about here. I need to mix up some more of my colour. It does use like stripping through everything. Never mind. So with the hand, I can see there's a shadow on the thumb, and then the hand drops down, and all these finger ends are in shadow. You've got the longer finger there. So this is mapping out. It's not drawing accurately. It's just feeling where things are. The drawing will come later. That possibly could go down a bit more. And that shadow runs down there. So if I do a bit of squinting, there is a shadow down there. So by mapping out all my shadows at the beginning, I can pretty much see where everything is, and I don't have to think too much about it. And again, I'm working with very watery paint, and I'll be working up to thicker paint and then using more and more linseed oil as I go. So the moustache, goes down there. And I'm also looking at, when I'm doing this, I'm looking at the amount of light area I need to leave for the mouth. That drops down there. You've got this darker bit that goes up there. And the chin might come down a little bit more. I can't make the head too big, because then I'll have to start cutting the body out. So that's a little bit taller up there. And squinting, I can see there's a shadow within the nose and there. I think that will probably do for now. I'm going to start applying the paint. So all my paint is mixed without linseed oil at the moment, so I'll be adding linseed oil with the brush as I go. So I'm going to use a filbert, which is there, that's it. It's this one, like a flat with curved edges, and this gives me the same kind of stroke as a flat brush but softer around the edges. So I will, on the screen, I will be working on the face, so I will enhance my face so it's larger, so I can see more detail. And then I start to plan out my shapes. Now within the cheek, I'm going to start working dark but then putting light on. There is an olive colour that goes down here. And there's also a slight olive colour in the eye here. So I'm quite dark at the moment. I will be adding lighter colour after I've put on my shadows. So within here there is a bit of an olive feel. And this is underpainting. I will be painting over this as I go. And I'm going to, within the beard, I can see there's a little bit of a pinkish olive colour. So I'll paint the beard over that. All the way down here, it's a little bit lighter. And then I'm going to put in a bit of the ear. So I'm putting in the ear shape in a mid-tone. Bottom of the ear is parallel to the moustache, so I put that a little bit low. So I'm going to take a bit of darker paint and go underneath that, and actually that is a very good colour for in there. And on the ear I'm going to put a little bit of detail so I can go a bit paler. And just get the angle of it and the height. Looking at the height of it, it's parallel to the eye. It's on a slope, but I will draw that slope when I put the hair colour on, which is very dark. Within the ear, it's pretty dark, so colour in there, and like that, that's inside the ear. So I'm just dipping between the colours on my palette. So for instance, for the dark area, I've just been going into this and this one. This is very dark, so I started with that and then I put a little bit of that into it. So I'm doing small colour mixes using my lighter colours, going into lighten this slightly. I'm dipping between all the colours I've mixed to get different tonal values. I think what I might do is draw the back of the ear. So I'm adding a little bit of water to this so it's not too thick, and I can then draw in my ear like that. That's not quite dark enough, that colour, so what I could do is mix some more of the red with the dark green and then add some ultramarine blue, and that will make an almost black. But at the moment I'll just carry on playing around with shapes that I can see. So within the ear, a bit darker. And going back into the face, there is a little bit of a warm colour around the edge here. Put that in. And then I'm going to put a little bit of lighter colour. It's definitely a bit lighter here. I'm not blending at the moment. But because I have all my colours mixed with pinks and yellows, it makes the colour start to form. I'm starting to see how my colour will look. This is a bit paler in here. Now I've put on a pale pink there, and that is actually more of a yellow, so I will change that later. I can add a little bit of yellow ochre into my pale mix and put that on. The joy of this method is that you make mistakes and then you rectify them, and you change colours, and you redraw and redraw, and it's never a process that entails just drawing and colouring in. I find this a more exciting way to work. So it's light underneath the eye. You can't actually really see much of the eye socket. Lighter here, and along the nose it's lighter. So it's pretty light on the front of the face. Because it's a photo, I always prefer working from life, but you can't always do that. The pale of the skin is very bleached, so I'm going to keep putting colour into it. Just looking at this pale shape here, which runs over there. I'm standing while I'm doing this, and the reason I'm standing is because normally when I'm doing my videos I'm sitting down, but with a portrait I like to be able to step back and stand back to see what I'm doing, and when you're sitting down you don't always do that. So I'll just put in the shape of the nose. The nose is lit from the bottom, which is nice. I'll just paint that whole area pale. And he's actually got a little bit of a blue light going down the side of the nose, but I'm going to put in the nose shadow, so there's a bit of shadow down there and up to here, which goes across just into the cheek a little bit. So to get that blue colour that goes up the side of the nose, what I'm doing is mixing a bit of white, and I've taken a little bit of my pale flesh colour and I'm putting that with it, and then a little bit of ultramarine blue, a bit more. I want it to be a little bit more blue. It's gone grey, so more blue, a bit more white. More white, and then that'll go on. I use the same colour down here with the bottom of the lip. And down here, there's a little lighter area going on where the beard is. And I'm going to work the eyes a little bit. I'm not putting on details. I'm not even looking at things like eyebrows until I'm happy with the construction of the face. few points to make here. I'm not too worried about the edges because when I paint background colour in, I will redraw. At the moment, I'm just correcting things. For instance, like my the bottom of the moustache here, or the side of the moustache, is too far to the right. If I look at the eye, the moustache leads up to about here. So I've got quite a correction to make, so I'll bring this pale flesh colour forward. So I'm just making little tiny adjustments as I go. And as you can see, the paint is starting to blend anyway. It's quite, it is watered down, but not massively so it is quite thick. I'll start probably working with a smaller brush as I work into more detail, but at the moment I'm quite happy with my filbert. I'm going to be mixing a very, very dark black to start drawing in the shape of the head and also the beard, and then I'll be assessing if the head needs to be taller, if the nose needs to adjust out or in, if the chin is within the right alignment with the bottom of the nose. So that's what I'll be doing as I go along. I've mixed my black down here, and while I was at it, there are some green highlights reflected from the background into the hair. So I've mixed a bit of iridium with a little bit of the cadmium yellow light into what I had on my palette knife from mixing this. So it's gone into a dark green, sort of an olive green. So adding a bit of water to my black. It's not very black because I've got some paler stuff on my brush, but it's dark enough. What happens when water-based oils dry, when you've used water, is that they dry flat like acrylic tend to. So I usually start my first layers with this method, and then I'll work on to using linseed oil as I build up. So going into here, it's actually a little bit paler, and there's a hint of blue. So I'm going to use this grey that I made up with some of my dark colour and put a little bit of blue into it. Don't want too much blue because I quite like the warm colours with the green. So I'm looking very carefully at where the edge of the head is compared with the eyebrow. About here, I think. And then we're going into darker colour over the ear. A little bit green over the ear. Put that in. That will probably disappear as I paint, but then I'll put it in again. Right, I don't want him to have completely green hair. Oops, take that. So I can't see anything here, so I'm not trying to paint hair, I'm trying to paint shapes. Going up here, I think his head is slightly higher with the hair up here. At the moment, he looks like a Victorian gentleman. That will change, I hope. I might have done the forehead a bit high, so that might change. It goes a little bit paler here, but underneath you've got quite a dark area. And a little bit paler on the top where the light hits. And then you've got a dark shadow just here. So going into the beard, there's quite a lot of it. So that goes up into the cheeks and stops about here. Got a few little stray bits. It drops down just here and also here. At this point, I just want to check that I've got my measurements right. And I'm looking at the angle I have here, and I'm looking at the angle from the nose to the chin. I think actually the chin could come out a bit more, so I'll bring it out, and I'd forgotten that I have to bring the cheek forward a bit, so that will change the mouth anyway, and the chin, so bring that over. So I'm looking at, on the photograph, the line of the chin compared with the nose. So if you're doing a profile, I always, when I'm doing a profile, I'll always check, say, the back edge of the nose and where it compares with what's underneath, and where the chin compares with the nose, and where the start of the eye compares with the side of the nose, at the corner of the mouth. So I do lines going down to check, and also lines across to check that my ear is on the right level with the front of the face here. And that's how I tend to work to construct the face. So darker under there. And I'm going to drop that darker line down here, so quite a way forward from where I had it, which means that this should come in a little bit more. Because I've put paint on and it's sitting there, when you try to put paint over it, it tends to dull it down a little bit. So what I do with my first layers is I try to put it on and then not put too much paint over it or too many layers. I'm just going to go with a smaller brush, mainly because it's clean. My other brush, the one I've been using, my Filbert, has got dark colour in it, and although these are water-based oils, the water doesn't tend to wash the colour out. You tend to have to use a little bit of white spirit to get the paint out. So that side of the face, I'm looking at the shape from the corner of the nose, and I'm working quite thickly to cover up what I've done. Drops down into here. That's a little bit too warm, really. So I'm going to go into the grey that I made, put a bit of white in it, put a little bit of a colder colour going down there, and I think that works better. That pale goes up the side of the nose and into the nose here, and then I'm going to look at the eye, which goes up a little bit. Eyelid is about there, and I'm going to put the eyeball in grey, because I'll lighten that later. And then I can look at the shadows just in here. So actually going into a smaller brush is probably just right for doing these areas around the nose. Back into my purplish colour. And I'm going to put this in again. It runs down to there. And then you've got this shadow within here. And into the nose area. And then a shadow down the side of the nose. There. Pushing it on thicker. And I think I'll just pop a nostril in so I can look at the shape of my nose. When you're trying to get close up to work, I tend to use my little finger. I put it down and then I use that to balance my hand. So the nostril, if I look at where it starts, the nostril starts about here. So well across to the left from the eye. And it goes up in a slope. Not worried about getting it too perfect. And I'm going to put a little bit of red in there, because I can see a little bit of red. Why am I not trying to get it too perfect? Because as I go, I will adjust that. When I put the light tone around the nostril, I will redraw it probably. Put a little bit more red into the nose. So not only am I looking at tonal value, I'm also looking at colour. This pale area comes in and describes the shape of the nose. And then looking at the lips, they should start about here. I can see quite a bit of his top bit there. And his bottom lip is very pale. As I say before, it's not the best thing to do from a photograph, because the photograph flattens colour, flattens tonal values, and I'm finding that this is rather washed out here. I can't really see what colours are going on. So you have to exaggerate and you have to use a bit of artistic license. That's another reason I take quite a few different photographs of the sitter in different positions, because when you look at your photographs you'll see that there's different colours going on and different tonal values. So I don't just tend to stick with one photograph, I will work from a few. Now what happens is his head drops down, sorry, his forehead drops down there and goes into the eyebrow. So it's starting to form slowly. I'm going to put a little bit of a more of a paler colour just on the ear, using my little finger to make sure I don't shake. And then there's a line that goes down into there. It's very pale around the nose, so I can draw the nose with the pale area that I can see there. I think the nostril should come back a little bit, however I want to make sure that it's in keeping with the eye. And it is quite a way far forward, so probably what I'll have to do is adjust the nose. I think his nose curves up a little bit just under there, which I'll just correct with a bit of my pale colour. And I think the shape of the nose is a little bit different to what I've got. So I've gone over my nostril, so using a bit of the dark colour, I'll put that back in. Lost the red that I put there, so I haven't really got my nostril shape yet. Put a bit of red just under there. That will come later when I work details. So I'm going to go back into my bigger brush now, my filbert, and I'm going to work on the body a little bit. Now when you're looking at a portrait, obviously the face is going to be the thing that pulls you in. So I'm not going to worry too much about doing a lot of detail on the body. I'm just going to put my light and my tonal values, my lights and my darks in there, because then you can judge how it's going to look as a whole. The body has got a lot more light than the face. I'm going to put in the shadow over here. Might even need to go to a bigger brush, but I'll stick with my filbert for now. What I'm working on is MDF, 3mm MDF. I'm using the back of another painting I did for this one. These days I tend to prefer to work on canvas board. I used to work on 3mm MDF a lot. I just have it cut and primed. I prime it myself. However, I'm finding it rather smooth these days. I quite like the canvas because the paint can slide across here. This is quite an old piece, so the primer has been on a long time and it's gripping more. I find that when I prime it and start painting straight away, I tend to use acrylic primer. I find that it doesn't grip very easily, which is why I moved on to the canvas. Also with canvas, you get that kind of texture of skin that works really well because of the weave of the cotton or linen, whereas with this it tends to be a little bit too smooth. You don't get that kind of change of light when one facet of the skin turns a different way. But I'm working on this merely because I didn't have a canvas big enough. So most of this is paler. There is quite a hint of blue and purple in there. His tattoo is very blue, so I quite like the purple and the blue going on in here, but at the same time I want to incorporate the green from the background as well. So working with lighter colours now, I'm just going to mark in the areas I can see. That's too warm. I'm going to put a little bit of blue into my darker colour, a little bit of white. In fact, I could take this one here. So a touch of ultramarine to change it into a purplish colour, and a little bit of white to lighten it. Then you've got where the clavicle is, you've got a shadow going down. I think also there's a little hint of this colour up here as well. So I do need to think about the face and the body together. Put some of that in there. And that shadow runs into the armpit. Then you've got the bluish shadow here. Done that a little bit dark, so I will lighten that later. Shadow over there. And then you've got the whole area of tattoo. Now the way I'm going to approach this tattoo is it's mostly blue, so I'm going to block it in with blue, and then I'm going to put in some flesh coloured swirls that I can see. I'm not going into too much detail with it. What it is it's a face, so I might just have a look at the face and put some shapes in just to suggest that. So going to put in a bit more blue into the mix I'm using. I'm just going to, that's actually wrong, I'm going to put more blue in, a little bit of white, and just put that over. Still a bit grey. Looking at it in the flesh, it's more of a manganese blue. But because I'm working from the photo, I'm going to use ultramarine and use my artistic license. So that goes over there, like that. And then the arm shoots out actually. So it might be that I lose the elbow. I'm going to do another measurement, which is chin to top of the head, and compare it here. So chin to the top of the head, from the shoulder to there. So the arm is about there. Just do a double measurement. Actually, I think my arm is a bit long. So going from the shoulder, which is a bit high, yeah, my arm should be here. So I will fit more in. And because the wrist is higher, and then the thumb goes up, and then my thumb is a little bit low where I had it. Within this arm here there's a shadow. That's a little bit more purple. So I'm going to change that. I like to do work like this when I'm putting all the shadows in, and then when you start to put the light areas in, it starts to become very three-dimensional. That's the bit that I really like. So over here, then I put that on there. So this is a little bit of working out. And looking at that line actually goes into the wrist. So that line is quite important. It curves around and then trots off over there, but your wrist is actually here. So if I take some of my darker colour and put that in, that curves over to there, and then the hand goes off over there. I think this is a bit long, so this is something to think about. So taking the crease from the on the armpit, I think that thumb should come in a little bit more. I'm going to put a little bit of a lighter colour in there, so I know what the thumb is doing. I'm going to work a little bit in my light colours now, just to get the feel of the how three-dimensional it's going to look, and I need a lot of adjustment here. So I think putting on my lighter tonal values will help that. He is, I remember when I took the photographs, quite red here because he'd been out in the sun, so I'm going to put in a little bit more red than what you can see in the photograph. Goes quite pale here and into the neck. That goes down there like that. quite a nice contrast between the tattoo and the skin down here. So I've gone a little bit lighter into here and then across like that. So I'm going to check this point, go up and see where it is on the chin on my photograph. If I go up on my photograph, yeah, it should be about here where I've got it. So I'm quite pleased with that. That worked quite well. So this is paler, so the tattoo needs to come over slightly. That's the armpit. And then this is all quite pale, so I'm just going to block this in. I use brush strokes that go in all different directions, and because of what's on my brush, I've already got some colour on there that goes into my pale area, and I think that makes it look more interesting. So I'm going to go a little bit purplish down here. And he's got a nice little bit of reflected light from this arm that goes into the shadow where the armpit is. So I'm going to take note of where the armpit is on this side compared with the back of his head. So if I go up with a line, the back of the head is about there, the armpit should be about here. Curving it round. And then it comes forward. So I'll just double check that to make sure I've got it correct. It should go behind the ear, just where the arm touches the hand. So going up, I'm happy with that. So the top of the thumb is here. So I actually think I need to pull back my thumb. And then what happens is you've got the wrist goes across there and down. The hand is pretty big, and looking at the wrist, which is below here, it drops down there like that, and the bottom of the arm is about there. So going back to up here, I'm going to put in my lighter areas. So this is a lighter area. And what's happening is I'm dragging the dark shadow colour into the light, and I don't really want to do that. So I'm taking more paint on my brush and just going over the top. I put a little bit of yellow ochre into there to have a little bit of a more interesting colour. It goes lighter over here and into the clavicle there. Then going down here with the armpit, it curves around up to there. So there is a light that runs down into where the armpit is. And then you've got quite a contrast going over the top of the arm and into this area here, which is quite pale. And so all these big areas that I'm putting in, within these areas there are lots of little shapes and colours going on, and you can go as detailed as you like or as loose as you like. You don't have to put all the detail in. The chest is a little bit paler over here and over there. And going up into the neck, I need to put a little bit more skin colour in, but it's pretty dark in there, so I'm going to be a bit careful with my lighter colour. Goes down to there, and you can see this is the wonderful thing about oils that you can't do with acrylics, is they just sit there and then you can blend at a later moment when you know you've got your shapes in correctly. Whereas with the acrylics you do have to blend as you go if you like the blended look. Acrylics are great for if you like a really rough look, but the blending's trickier. Shadow in there, and then I can see a little bit of a light in there. I'm going to put in quite a reddish colour, because what that will do is if I put a little bit of green into the ear, that will enhance the green and make it stronger. So at the moment I'm not really thinking too much about colour, I'm thinking about mapping out and tonal values. I'm not happy with the length of the ear and also the angle of it. I think it goes over here a little bit more. I think my nose might be a little bit too long, but I'm going to put the eyebrow in because that will tell me quite a bit about the length of the nose. So the eyebrow goes around this area of skin and then it goes up. He's got really good eyebrows. That's one of the things I liked about Jose as a model. And that eyebrow at the front does cut down more towards the eye. That might be a bit too much. We shall see. Well, we might adjust that. So I think my proportions aren't too bad. I'm going to work on the cheeks a little bit more, but then I'm digressing. I'll go back to the arm. What I probably might do is work on the body a little bit in my own time and carry on with the head with the videos, so you can see it go a little bit further than it would do if I was just doing the videos. The hair actually comes down here. See, I've gone back to the head. I tend to just go where I feel like. I don't have a method as to what I feel I need to do first or last. I think his head is taller. It is quite dark around the eye here. I'm going to leave that though, because I'm going to carry on down here a bit. I'm going to work around where the hand is and try and put in a little bit more hand. So there's a very dark shadow under the thumb, so I'm going to try and put that in. There's a lost edge with the thumb and the shadow over the arm, which I like, so I'll try and keep that. This finger curves down there, and you've got shadow, so this finger curves round a little bit. He did have trouble with where to put his hands, so they look a bit uncomfortable. Had I had more time, because he was in the middle of work, had I had more time I would have asked him to try different positions with his fingers. I'm just putting the shadows of the fingers in. That's a little finger, and possibly the shape of the back of the hand, like that. The finger seems a bit small. It does seem a very big hand, and what I'll probably do is I'll remeasure just to check and make sure that it's all correct. So it goes flat underneath. I think I'll just get that elbow in. Maybe not, we'll see. So that curves there. It could be I've made this shoulder a little bit long. When I go up from the shoulder, I'll measure it against the chin. So the shoulder is actually more parallel to the chin. So what I'll have to do with a bit of background, which I can do that now, because that might be, if I forget, that will be very irritating. I'll just shave off with a little bit of a pale colour. A little bit of this arm goes down to there, and then you've got the muscle of the arm, which is nice, it goes over there. and then this comes out a little bit down to the elbow. So I put this in the background. This is not how the background will look, it's just a paler colour so I can see what I'm doing over here. This might be a bit fat, so I will again shave a bit. So I'm mixing a bit of the white that I have on my palette with a little bit of the pale green, and I'm going to shave that a little bit. Like that. I think he might need a bit more beard, but I'm going to stand back at some point and adjust that. I'm going to put a little bit of green into the face. So it's a bit of a lime green. Just to see how it looks actually, maybe into the ear and into the around here a little bit. I only want a little tiny bit, and maybe into this bit here, like that. And then when I put the background on, there'll be a nice harmony going on in there. A little bit of green down here. Oops, that's a bit too pale. There is a nice pale area here, and I will make that a little bit more green. So anyway, that is it for today. And I will be looking at this in between videos and adjusting a little bit when I start the next video, and tell you my thoughts when I've had a think. So I hope you give this a go, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.